Hello, and welcome to Let's Talk Texas. I'm Dr. Kendra T. Jones, and I am a real estate agent, and I'm licensed in Tennessee and Texas. And today we have Mr. Greg Flynn, who is a loan officer, and he is in Texas. So today we'll talk about the loan process. I want people to understand at a very clear level what is needed. There's so many steps in the mortgage process, of course, and there's so many professionals. And so you meet a lot of people, a lot of things are going on, but we want to pause today specifically on the mortgage process. So what's going to happen when it is time, what it looks like, and then we'll unpack a little bit some of the information that Mr. Flynn will share with us today. And we'd like to thank him for joining us and providing this information for the public. So, yes. Another fun fact. Mr. Flynn is with American Mortgage Company. So we are housed in the same place. So it's basically like a one-stop shop. So if someone is coming to meet their realtor, I'm with Keller Williams Allen, and he's with American Mortgage Company, and we're located in the same place. So that's one good one-stop shop for whoever is shopping and looking to buy a home. So that's a plus. Well, today, Mr. Flynn, if you would please share with us your perspective on what the mortgage process should look like.
Yeah, and we were talking just before we started rolling here about how daunting the home financing and mortgage process can be,
Yes.
and I see that every day. I mean, I was just driving into work this morning, and I heard a guy on my sports radio station that I listen to talk about how when he bought his first house, he didn't think there was any way he could qualify for a house, but once he started looking into it, it was a lot easier than he thought.
Yes.
And I have stories all over the place, but I have a long time friend of mine
Mhm.
that I still stay in touch with, and his son was wanting to buy a house, and he told me one day, he said, "Yeah, Dylan's trying to save up his 20% so he can buy his house." I said, "That's old thinking. You don't have to have 20% to buy a house anymore. There's
Right.
a lot of better vehicles to get in there." So just a lot of misconceptions in there. And so, one thing I like to say is we like to try to make the process just as smooth and easy as possible. We get the least amount of data that we need to. We're not going to ask for 10 years of tax returns and all
Okay.
kinds of crazy stuff. We just try to keep it to the bare bones of what we need. And I think what a
Yes.
lot of people will find is it's just as easy as going to a almost just as easy as going to Nebraska Furniture and getting a charge card there. Or
Right.
it definitely as easy as buying a car.
Yes.
So anyway, so I thought I'd talk about just kind of the beginning parts
Absolutely.
of the mortgage process. And so there's two things that kind of go on in the very early stages, and there's two terms in the mortgage industry that people kind of use
Mhm.
synonymously, but there is a big difference between
Mhm.
the two, and that's being pre-qualified
Yes.
or being pre-approved.
Okay.
A pre-qualification is a more informal, hey, I would talk with a prospective buyer slash
Mhm.
buyer and just kind of go over at a 30,000 foot level, kind of, what do you do for a living?
Right.
What monthly obligations do you have, like car payments and stuff? What do you think your credit score is?
Mhm.
Do you have a down payment? Are you going to need some down payment assistance? Things like that.
Okay.
Just kind of at a high level to get an understanding. And after about a 5 or 10 minute phone call or
Mhm.
in-person conversation, I'll have a pretty good idea of the
Okay.
price point that they would qualify for.
Okay.
So you can do all that without being intrusive at all. Then
Got it.
the other thing that people kind of equate with the pre-qualification is actually the pre-approval process.
Yes.
And the reason they call it the pre-approval process is there's actually a letter that
Okay.
comes out at the end of that process called the pre-approval letter.
Yes.
And the pre-approval letter is something that your realtors will want to have so they know that they're showing you the right price points, the right
Right.
range of houses,
Okay.
know that you're a qualified buyer, know
Mhm.
that you shouldn't have any trouble once you go under contract and we go through the underwriting process.
Okay.
And so to get a pre-approval letter, that's kind of the next step. We've gone from the informal conversation, just kind
Mhm.
of over a cup of coffee,
Sure.
to now I would send you a link to our online mortgage application.
Okay.
Very short application, take you probably all of 5 or 10 minutes to fill
Okay.
out. I don't need a bunch of documents. I don't need pay stubs. I don't need tax returns. I don't need W-2s. I don't need bank statements. I don't need anything like that at that
Okay.
particular point in time.
Okay.
But what it'll do is it'll give me just some general information. Basically, it will memorialize a lot of the things we talked about over
Mhm.
coffee, what your employment is, how long
Yes.
you've been there, how much you make,
Okay.
things like that. where you live now, how long you've lived there, just some demographic
Mhm.
information.
Yes.
Then once all that's completed, what it'll also do, and this is really the key thing, is it'll
Mhm.
give me permission to run the credit report.
Okay.
And so that's a big part of the mortgage process is credit reports. You have to have a minimum score to even get a mortgage.
Right.
But the thing about it, the higher credit score you have, the better interest rate you get, the better
Okay.
PMI rate you get. So that's why the credit report is so important. The credit report also shows me every single trade line that you've had, from
Okay.
credit cards to car payments to student
Okay.
loans
Yes.
to other house payments and stuff like that. So that way you don't have to worry about filling all that out on
Mhm.
the application. It'll all
Mhm.
come through on the credit report, because a lot of
Okay.
times people don't remember. Oh yeah,
Right.
co-signed on a
So much
car.
information.
Yes,
Yes.
co-signed on a car for somebody and forgot about it.
Yes.
Stuff like that. So we get all that from the credit report.
Okay.
So then once the credit report's run, once the application's done, then I'll run the numbers, see how much the person qualifies for it, and then I
Okay.
can give them and the realtor, I'll give them both a
Yes.
pre-approval letter. And I'll kind of
Okay.
give them a pre-approval letter at the maximum amount first.
Wonderful.
And then once you find the house that you want to put an offer in, we'll go and we'll revise that letter to match
Okay.
the offer price. So the
Yes.
seller doesn't know, oh, they qualify for 500,000.
Yes.
And why are they trying to negotiate down on the house?
Right.
So
Okay.
it's a fluid letter that
Okay.
will change
Okay.
as things happen.
Awesome. 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 What would you recommend, or how would you advise someone that is wanting to prepare, they're just thinking about it. So I think it can be intimidating, like we were saying, there's so many pieces to the puzzle. In regards to those first steps.
Yeah.
They give you a call, and like you said, they're basically just going to give you basic information.
Right.
And so maybe a little bit more on, I know you said credit score is good. What would you say a minimum credit score should be?
So 620 is the minimum credit score for a conventional loan.
Okay.
But you can go all the way down to 580 for an FHA loan.
Okay.
And you might say, well, I would rather do a conventional loan. Well, FHA loans actually typically have a lower interest rate and
Okay.
a lower PMI rate. So there's no harm in doing FHA. FHA is the second most popular type of loan.
Okay.
I'd say of all loans that are done for houses, probably about 70% are done on conventional loans.
Okay.
And about 28% are done on FHA loans.
Okay.
And then the rest are just 2% of just miscellaneous niche products.
Okay.
So most of the loans are going to be conventional or FHA. So you can get in for an over 580 credit score. And kind of to go back to your question, one thing I would start thinking about, the documents that we will need once you go under contract and we go into underwriting is pretty easy. Like I said, typically, unless you're self-employed, we'll never need a tax return.
Okay.
So if you're a W-2 employee, typically all we're going to ask for eventually is your most recent 2 pay stubs and your most recent 2 W-2s.
Okay.
And then all we're going to need from an asset side is just 2 months of bank statements.
Okay.
And that's basically just to show, if you say I'm going to put 3% down, just the bank statements that show that you have 3% in the bank. And we don't need all the bank statements of all your assets. We're only going to look at what we need to do the minimum down payment that you're putting down or whatnot. So those are the 2 or 3 main things to start thinking about putting in order. And the reason I mentioned, especially the pay stubs, on top of having a good minimum credit score, employment and length of employment is a big deal in the mortgage industry.
Yes. Okay.
So the rule of thumb is you really need to have 2 years of consistent employment.
Okay.
Now it doesn't have to be at the same employer.
Okay.
But it needs to be somewhat in the same industry.
Got it.
So you can't be a pilot and then go to be, an accountant or something like that.
Got it. Okay.
So it needs to kind of match the same industry.
Okay.
And people get laid off, people change jobs, people have gaps. Gaps are fine. But we just want to go back for 2 years worth, even if we have to go back 2.5 years to get 2 years.
To get the 2 years.
The gaps are typically not a problem.
Awesome. Okay. Okay. I think that definitely explains, and it speaks to that this process is doable. Like, people can totally do it. I think having the education and the information, it will help kind of decrease the anxiety that is centered around, oh my God, this is the big step. This is a big thing. So I think it makes sense to definitely be prepared. Maybe educate yourself, like what they're doing now, listening to information regarding the process and what is going to be expected. I do have another question. The biggest thing is now that we've talked about the process and we're excited, everything is on the table. We're in motion. So we've gotten everything, documents are rolling, and We're getting everything ready to go, and we are anticipating a close date. However, what would you advise while we're waiting in the interim? What should people do or what should they not do to ensure that they will be closed and funded?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because it does happen as much as you think it wouldn't happen. One of the worst things you can do once you're under contract and you're in the underwriting process before the close date is go out and take on more credit, whether
Mm-hmm.
that be go out and buy a car,
Mm-hmm.
get a new car loan. That can mess up a deal really fast
Wow.
by doing that at the last minute. Also, going out and getting a new credit card. I know you'd probably be excited and want to get some furniture for the house.
Yes.
So I mentioned
Yes.
Nebraska furniture earlier.
Yep.
Don't go if you don't already have a Nebraska furniture card.
Don't.
Go get one until after you close. If you already have a Nebraska furniture card and you want to buy some stuff, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal.
Right.
But it's really just any new credit because there's questions and can be a subsequent credit pull right before closing that will catch that stuff. And I mean, it's typically not the end of the world, but it can be a problem. It can definitely be a problem. So I would just shy away from taking on any new credit right before. Also, any big transactions coming in and out of your bank account, because we will pull a bank transaction history right before close to make sure there wasn't any a big amount of money going out or a big amount of money coming in. So that would have to be sourced and explained, and that can just cause some complications. I mean, you have to keep living your life. So
for sure.
If you have things that have to happen, they have to happen. But if you have some control over, $10,000 coming into your account or $10,000 coming out of your account, I would probably recommend holding off on that.
Sounds like a plan. I think that's doable. Well, last but not least, we really enjoyed the information, have gotten so many good tips. I know that right now data is speaking in regards to our seniors. Our seniors, a population that are downsizing for whatever reason. And they have been in their homes. They've been in their homes for 20, 30 years, a good amount of time, and they have built what we call equity. Can you speak to us just a quick second about maybe some of the common uses that equity can help in regards to a situation as far as like a senior?
Yeah, we see this all the time. I mean, seniors, once the kids are out of school and it's just the two of them and they have this big house that they've had for a lot of years, they don't need all that space or they don't need the upstairs or whatnot. So they start looking to downsize. And what a lot of seniors and just people in general run into, even if you're just wanting to get a different house, even if you're wanting to upgrade your house and get a larger house, is a lot of times you need that equity out of that house for the down payment on the new house. And so you can either try to time it up and be contingent on the new offer or whatever, but that gets kind of tricky. As you know, from a realtor, a lot of sellers don't want to take a contingent offer. So there's a couple different things you can do. You could take a HELOC out on the equity portion of your house, and so you could pull some of that equity out early, so you could use that as the down payment. That would be one option. Another option is a bridge loan, where it's just kind of what it sounds. It just bridges the gap from when you selling this house to buying this house. And what it does is you don't have to qualify for both houses like you normally would. You just have to show that once you sold that old house, you put, if you wanted to put a significant amount of money down on the new house, that you could qualify for the new house. You don't have to keep qualifying for the old. There's a little bit of a cost with a bridge loan, but it's a whole lot better option than trying to time it up or put your house on the market and take a low ball offer just to get out of it. You could probably lose more money on the sale of your house by doing that than you would spend on the cost of a bridge loan. And it's a pretty easy process. We can time it up with the purchase of the new house. The interest rate is basically the same as with the interest rate that you're going to be paying on the new house anyway. It's just some upfront fees, anywhere from 0.5% to 1% upfront fee that you normally wouldn't have when doing a transaction. But it's definitely a good option. And then we also do reverse mortgages as well for people that are in their houses and they have a lot of equity in their house. And you can even do that. You could even take the equity, buy the new house, and then down the road, you want to start pulling some equity out of the house in the new property that you're in,
Okay.
a reverse mortgage is a good option for that as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate the information and we look forward to providing additional information. But thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Mr. Flynn.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. And so, again, this is Kendra Jones and then Mr. Greg Flynn. We are located at 1002 Raintree Circle, and that is in Allen, Texas. So give us a shout out if you all need to get some additional information. Would definitely be open to doing a buyer's consult. So just reach out to us and let us know. But thank you so much for joining us today, and we appreciate the time. So happy house buying. Thanks.